What is up, ladies and gents? This is George Bean, and with this year, 2018, being the 10th anniversary of the release of The Dark Knight, I decided on reviewing Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Trilogy. In this video, it being my 50th video now, oddly enough, I am reviewing the first installment, that being the 2005 film Batman Begins, which was directed by Christopher Nolan, written by Nolan, his brother Jonathan, and David S. Goyer, and starring Christian Bale as the titular superhero. Batman Begins was the first Batman film since the critical failure of the atrocious Batman and Robin in 1997, which had put the series on hiatus for 8 years, during which that time Warner Brothers had attempted to revitalize the series, and in their attempt to differentiate it from the previous films, had opted to make it darker and more serious. Upon release on the 15th of June 2005, the film received positive receptions from critics and audiences, with many praising it for its attempt to deviate from the Burton Schumacher films by having a darker and realistic tone and setting. It's delving more into understanding who Batman is and what motivates him, and the strong performances from its star-studded cast, with the most going towards Michael Caine as Alfred and Gary Oldman as Gordon. The plot, the film Batman Begins, itself being a full-on reboot, focuses on the origin story of how billionaire playboy Bruce Wayne had become the vigilante called Batman. After witnessing the murder of his parents by a mugger as a child, Bruce spends over a decade going around the world to learn injustice and how to fight it. Thus, he receives extensive training from a secret elite group known as the League of Shadows. And upon returning to his hometown, Gotham City, he begins to build his becoming a masked stealth vigilante known as Batman to fight crime and injustice. But as he continues his nightly activities, Batman begins to uncover a massive corruption conspiracy that threatens Gotham City. When they were in post-production on 1997's Batman and Robin, which they were sure was going to be a hit, Warner Brothers was already beginning development on the fifth Batman film with director Joel Schumacher, which was tentatively titled Batman Unchained, or more commonly, Batman Triumphant, which would have had Scarecrow and Harley Quinn as the villains, with Harley retooled to become the Joker's daughter, oddly enough. But after Batman and Robin was released to not-so-great box office results and overwhelmingly critical and audience panning, Warner's had pulled the plug on Unchained, and not long afterwards they had decided to essentially reboot the franchise. Their first attempt was in 1998 with Batman Dark Knight by comic fan Lee Shapiro, which would have featured Bruce Wayne giving up his Batman career, but that didn't go very far. And in 2000, Warner had decided to develop two Batman projects, and see which one would win them over the most. One of which was to be Batman Year One by Darren Aronofsky and Frank Miller. Year One would have been a rather very loose adaptation of Miller's comic book of the same name, as it would have featured Bruce Wayne as living in a rundown garage owned by an African-American Alfred, who would have been a mechanic instead of Bruce's butler. And it would have had no supervillain in it. It was essentially Batman versus the mob, and it was even described as being in the vein of The French Connection and Taxi Driver. But Warner had rejected this because it deviated too far from the source material, much like Superman Lives. Then in 2002, Andrew Kevin Walker, the writer of Seven, pitched to Warner a team-up crossover titled Batman vs. Superman. So yes, Warner has had the idea of a Batman-Superman crossover since 2002. But in 2004, Warner had cancelled that project in favor of focusing on individual films for the two superheroes instead. Even Joss Whedon had pitched a Batman origin story in late 2002, but was rejected too. But finally, in early 2003, Warner had hired Christopher Nolan to direct, after being impressed by his film Memento, and David S. Goyer also signed on to write the script. When writing the script, Nolan and Goyer had aimed to make a Batman film with a darker and more realistic approach than the previous films, in terms of storytelling and tone, taking inspiration from the Batman comic books The Man Who Falls, Batman Year One, and Batman The Long Halloween. Not only that, but Nolan had also taken influence from the 1978 Superman film, of which he was a huge fan of, and Blade Runner, which he had the crew watch to convey the type of look he wanted to give for Gotham City. Watching the movie, you can definitely tell that it was influenced by Blade Runner, especially in the scenes where it's raining in Gotham. And on a side note, I have actually seen the sequel, Blade Runner 2049, and I have to say I actually enjoyed that film. I thought it was a proper follow-up to the original Blade Runner, and to be honest, I like 2049 more for its mystery plot in it. Okay, back to the review. One big trivia fact is that Christopher Nolan had only made 2 movies before this film, and they were Memento and Insomnia. Memento was a small psychological thriller about retrograde amnesia, while Insomnia was a detective thriller starring Al Pacino and Robin Williams in a more sinister role. So the fact that Warner's had given Nolan the opportunity to direct a tentpole superhero film like this was a huge risk to take. But it had paid off very well, and as a result, Warner's has ended up with 2 sequels to this film, and Nolan now has veto power to direct whatever film he wants to now. And as of this video, his most recent film was the 2017 World War II film Dunkirk, which is now considered to be Nolan's best film to date. Now, to bring this up, this film had an overall gross of $374 million against a $150 million budget. Now to say, its opening weekend gross, which was $48 million, was seen as, quote, strong but unimpressive by today's instantaneous blockbuster standards, end quote. And for any other movie, this kind of numbers may not warrant a sequel, but on home video, the film's sales had skyrocketed. So while it did not make big bucks numbers theatrically, its huge home video sales proved to Warner Brothers that interest in the film was growing strongly in audiences and fans. And this had thankfully gave them the momentum that they needed to greenlight a sequel, which would eventually become The Dark Knight, which, as we all know, would end up grossing $1 billion at the worldwide box office, up to $700 million more than Batman Begins had grossed. To make a comparison on its box office numbers, in 2006, Warner Brothers released Superman Returns, directed by Bryan Singer, which was structured as a love-lettering sequel to the Richard Donner Superman. That film had grossed $391 million worldwide against a budget of $223 million. Now, you'd think this be enough for Returns to warrant a sequel as well, but Warner's didn't believe so, and that's because you have to compare Returns' $223 million budget to Batman Begins' $150 million budget. Returns costed more than Begins. So with that in mind, it really wasn't enough to warrant a sequel, and in addition to the fans' mixed reception towards Returns, it's really no wonder Warner's had decided to scrap the sequel and instead reboot the whole series with 2013's Man of Steel, which of course had grossed up to $668 million worldwide. And we also all saw how its sequel had turned out, Batman v Superman. So yeah, we can safely assume that Batman is more popular than Superman, and has practically become Warner's golden boy. which would explain the reason why they included him so soon in the Man of Steel sequel, which as we all know is now titled Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. But really, the reason Begins had such a low gross in its box office, the main contributing factor is that even 8 years later, many people still had the badness of Batman and Robin on their minds, and they were not really that interested in another campy Batman film. But then, along comes this film, which features an entirely different Batman, which really took everyone by surprise. Nobody expected such a movie of this caliber to come. So really, people had only needed a matter of time to take in what they were presented in Begins. So by the time the Dark Knight had rolled around, everybody had already seen Begins and were intrigued by what it was presenting to them. So yeah, Batman Begins was a very surprising film for Bat fans, including me. The Batman movie they did not expect to actually get. Now, there's one little fact I should mention about how I have become a Batman fan in life. To admit in embarrassment, my very first Batman I had seen was Batman Forever, when I at first watched it on VHS when I was like 4 or 5 years old. Yeah, I'm not making this up. Batman Forever was my first Batman movie, but I did not know better at the time. And I think the order in which I had seen the Batman films were Batman Forever, the animated film, Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, I think? Yeah, it was an animated film. I watched it on tape. Batman and Robin, sadly enough. Batman 1989, and The Dark Knight, in that order. So yeah, I did not get to watch them in successive order, and of course I had gotten into Batman as a kid, but it actually wasn't until I had first seen the Nolan films when I had become more of a Batman fan. So yes, I am a Batman fan. You can tell by my hat. I'm even wearing the shirt, for example. Yep, Bat logo and all. That's how much of a big Bat fan I really am. So if anything, yeah, Batman fan for life. Thanks most prominently by the Nolan films. Now for me, I haven't had the chance to see this in cinema in 2005, and it was not until 2007 when I had finally gotten this on DVD after deciding on a bargain price, deciding screw it, I'll finally watch it. It was like when I was like 13 or 14. So when I first put the disc in and pressed the play movie, I went into the movie not knowing what to expect out of it. I had went in with rock bottom expectations, and I had came out positively surprised. I was generally surprised by what this movie had presented to me. I did not expect it to turn out as good as it actually had. Even as a kid, I was surprised, especially how it had done Batman's origin story so solidly well without it feeling rushed or unnecessary. And in hindsight, I'd possibly say that, in me becoming a big Bat fan, this movie was sort of the launch pad, whilst The Dark Knight was the rocket that launched it for me. So yeah, I can honestly say it was Batman Begins and Dark Knight that had officially made me the Bat fan I have now become. What I really loved about this film is how it gives an extensive and plausible explanation as to how Bruce had gotten all of the tools he had needed to become Batman, such as the gadgets or his suit, and most of all, his learning how to use stealth and fighting skills. Cause as a young kid before this movie, when watching Batman Forever and shit, I had always wondered how Bruce Wayne, a billionaire playboy, could get such stuff like that. In this film, it's all explained very well, and in a very fitting manner. In the case of his gadgets, he had gotten it all from his own company's R&D department. And as for his skills as a stealth fighter, he had been trained by a secret society of elite ninja assassins. And it also helps explain for the bat suit. It's made of Kevlar plating, which makes it bulletproof. So it thoroughly explains the suit being more properly designed for combat, not like the suits in the Burton Schumacher films as much as I like the suits, the regular ones. Especially the bat nipples. Those were like, what the fuck? You know? And also, I love the tumbler in this film. I honestly like it more than the Batmobile in the previous original films. I'm sorry. But I like that the tumbler is more like a tank. This is a vehicle that someone like Batman would need. Something that could plow through anything with ease. I like how it's explained that it was originally built as a bridging vehicle during combat. It uses a booster to jump over a river, boosted into a rampless jump, and so it is put to very good use for Batman. And also in its original design, it was colored in camouflage. And in a subtle way, Bruce asks, does it come in black? I really love that. Doesn't need to show too much, just that one line, and done. Perfect. But also, I love the scenes involving Bruce being trained by Liam Neeson in the League of Shadows on the mountainside monastery. They're great scenes to watch. Bruce training and learning the fighting and stealth skills he would use to become Batman. They're very good scenes to watch the training and all, especially when he's learning how to sword fight with Liam Neeson out on the ice. You could hear the ice cracking. That's really actually ice cracking when they were shooting, because they were shooting that scene on a warm spring. So if you hear the ice cracking during that scene, that's actually real ice cracking. Now for the cast, Christian Bale was really outstanding as Bruce Wayne and Batman. It is mentioned in the film that Batman is actually the real Bruce. It represents who he really is, while his regular self as Bruce Wayne is a mask for him to hide behind. Which is a pretty interesting point for the movie to bring up. I've heard some people compare Bale's Bruce Wayne persona to that of a similar character he played in the 2000 serial killer black comedy film American Psycho, which I have watched, where he played a Wall Street playboy with an oddball behavior who also moonlights as a sadistic serial killer. However, if there's just one minor problem I have with Bale as Batman, it is the voice. He goes for that gruffy, growling voice whenever he's Batman. Sometimes you could understand what he's saying, other times I couldn't. And loads of people have also had complaints about the voice as well. I really don't understand why Batman has to tone down his voice. Is it because for in case if someone has a voice recorder on them so they could analyze his voice or something? I don't really know. So I'm not generally a fan of Batman using a gruffy voice like that. But Gary Oldman was absolutely amazing as James Gordon. I'd say that this is possibly one of his very best roles ever. It's very refreshing to see Gary Oldman playing a character who is full-on sympathetic and has no ulterior motives. He ends up becoming an ally to Batman. And as the trilogy progresses, he also ends up seeing Batman as a friend, which is honestly a pretty nice moment of characterization for these two guys. Come the Dark Knight, Gordon and Batman have become trusting allies in their fight against organized crime, and try to stick together when up against the Joker. It's a great little chemistry between the two. But yeah, in these movies, Gordon is actually doing something, and not just some lazy fucking commissioner, like in the Burton Schumacher movies, where he barely does jack shit in those movies. Like in one scene, gets to see Batman drive the tumbler, tanking its way through 2 cop cars, and Gordon is like, I have gotta get me one of those. Great line as well. And then later during the climax, Batman gives Gordon a chance to drive the tumbler to destroy the monorail system to Wayne Tower to stop the train. It's actually pretty awesome to see Gordon driving the tumbler for once. It actually has Gordon contributing to the plot hugely. And of course, Michael Caine was brilliantly casted as Bruce's friendly butler Alfred Pennyworth. He gives the Alfred role a persona and character that makes him feel very important in the story. He is always there by Bruce's side to help him out, no matter how much the situation ends up escalating for the worse. I love the chemistry between Bruce and Alfred in these films. They are always playing at each other when they converse. I love when Alfred says, "What is the point of all those push-ups if you can't even lift a bloody log?" It's a really funny line by him. And Liam Neeson was good in this. I think this was like a few years before he did Taken, which I really enjoyed seeing him in. It proved that you don't fuck with Liam Neeson because he will look for you, find you, and kill you if he wants to. Of course, in this film, he plays Bruce's mentor, Henry Deckard, a member of the League of Shadows, working under Ra's al Ghul. Liam always happens to play a mentor type, like when he played Obi-Wan's mentor, Qui-Gon Jinn, in Star Wars The Phantom Menace. But in the second half, it is revealed in a twist that Liam Neeson is actually Ra's al Ghul, and that the Ra's Bruce met at their monastery was actually a decoy. At the time, it was an interesting twist to go by, and also a way of avoiding, I guess, the Fu Manchu stereotype? Most people would call that whitewashing. It's funny because Iron Man 3 had actually done the exact same thing with the Mandarin, where they had Ben Kingsley play the Mandarin as a ruthless terrorist leader. But it turns out that he's a decoy covering for the real villain, which was Aldrich Killian, played by Guy Pearce. With Pearce! It's the exact same thing, except in this case, nobody went batshit over the change. And to say, I actually like the League of Shadows in this movie. I like that it is depicted like this secret ancient society of elite ninja assassins who have been responsible for many world events for centuries. They are even revealed to have been responsible for the Great London Fire and even the Black Death Plague, which had wiped out half of Europe in the 16th century. And I also like how Ross says Gotham is a city so corrupt, we have infiltrated every level of its infrastructure. It shows how powerful this group really is, and it also shows just how badly corrupt the city has become. But of course, it appears that the concept of Gotham being a hot mess isn't explored anymore in the sequels. Because like in The Dark Knight, Gotham appears to have become clean in the past year since the events of this film. Finally, we also have Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox, who works at Wayne Enterprises' R&D division, and also becomes Bruce Wayne's supplier in the Batman equipment. Morgan Freeman is awesome in this movie, as he always is in all of his movies. Always. I like how they gave him an important role in the trilogy as being the one who supplies the Batman stuff. It gives a very good explanation as to how Bruce had managed to get that equipment and gadgets and stuff. And also, we have Cillian Murphy, or Killian Murphy, I think, as Dr. Jonathan Crane, or Scarecrow, who's a criminal psychologist who also moonlights as a psychotic criminal himself, using a fear toxin to induce the fears and phobias of those he doses. At first, during Batman's first few night outs, Scarecrow is kind of like a big villain in the film, but it turns out that he, alongside the mob boss Carmine Falcone, are mere puppets for the League of Shadows to orchestrate their unleashing the fear toxin onto Gotham on a mass scale. I've seen Cillian Murphy in loads of other movies, 28 Days Later, the Wes Craven airplane thriller Red Eye. He was even in another Chris Nolan movie, Inception, as well. Honestly, he was okay in this film as Scarecrow, but as we all know, I believe he was terribly underused in sequels, where he is regulated to merely a cameo in them. But one trivia fact is that, again, Scarecrow is strongly considered as a villain since Batman Triumphant, so he was someone Warners have been considering for a long while. And I also love how in that one scene in Arkham, Scarecrow realizes that Batman is nearby about to attack. Scarecrow says, "He's here." One thug asks, "Who?" To which Scarecrow responds, "The Batman." I don't know why, but I love how he says that line. It sounds so funny. Even Oliver Harper brought this up in his commentary on this film. And yeah, Yeah, if y'all haven't seen the commentaries done by Oliver Harper and Duncan Casey on these films, the Dark Knight films, seriously, go check them out. They're pretty fucking hilarious to listen to, especially when Duncan Casey does some pretty brilliantly funny impersonations of Christian Bale and Michael Caine. Such funny Brits, these guys. I'll give you all a link to their Batman Begins commentary in the description box below. I mean, seriously, go listen to the commentaries. You'll have a fun night listening to these guys. It's... And I absolutely love that the scene that features Batman very first night out in the suit, when he's formally in the Batsuit, when he's at the docks and he takes on the thugs and Falcone. It's very well shot how we barely see Batman in full view when he fights the thugs. You only get good glimpses of Batman. It's almost like to think, what is that? And that one awesome moment is when one thug is futilely shooting at Batman and he yells out, "Where are you?" And then Batman appears behind him upside down saying, "Here," scaring the thug before he flaps out his cape. That's such an awesome moment. It's very unexpected and cool. I remember when first watching it, I turned wide-eyed when he says, "Here." And finally, when he confronts Batman, we finally see Batman in full view, and he says, "I'm Batman." Such a great moment. It's the moment where Batman is formally established and all of our worries are put to rest. Oh, and also, I love how he ties up Falcone to that huge floodlight thing. Really, I don't know about anybody else, but that guy must be burning on that thing. He'd end up with severe burns from that. So things can get hot. Those things can get fucking hot. But again, I do love the moments when Batman is crouching down and his cape is flapping calmly in the air. And even the one quick moment of Batman standing over something on the high-rise like a gargoyle, just looking over at Gotham. It's a pretty cool shot. And that was actually done by a man, a stuntman. And even Christian Bale did it in The Dark Knight. And the music score by Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard works perfectly in these movies. It benefits for the movie and pulls us into the story arc on an emotional level. But the best piece has to be the main Batman theme. When it does the dun dun dun, it's really good. The music works perfectly in these films, again. And one tiny little tidbit I want to bring up concerning Hans Zimmer's having scored Batman v Superman. I do love the one piece in that film during the Day of the Dead sequence. It's a really pretty good piece I now always listen to. You can find the video of the Day of the Dead score in the description box below. Skip to the 1 minute mark. And you'll see what I mean. It's honestly damn good, if I must say. I do also enjoy the climax battle when Batman has to stop Ra's from fully unleashing the fear toxin onto the city, and they're fighting on the monorail train, hurtling towards the Wayne Tower. It's basically what I had coined as the time bomb scenario. It's an element I found in film where the hero has a limited window of time to avert something which could cause catastrophic consequences. It's something we had seen in loads of movies since the dawn of film. Yeah, I call it the time bomb scenario. You can apply it to any film you watch. It could be something like Unstoppable, Crimson Tide, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Star Wars, any and all you can find. It's essentially the same scenario. Same story, different versions. But what I really love is the very ending to this movie. In the final scene where Batman and Gordon meet on the police plaza roof, where Gordon has just built a new bat signal to which Batman compliments, and Gordon tells Batman about an armed robbery by a criminal who left a calling card, a Joker card, and Batman says that he'd look into it. And afterwards, Batman and Gordon formally establish their friendship, in which Gordon says, "I never said thank you," to which Batman replies, "And you'll never have to," before he leaps off into the night. Cut the credits. I absolutely love how it ends that way. It was such a very fitting way to end such a movie like this. A nice conclusion to the origin story, and also a perfect setup for what is to come in the sequel. And another tidbit, I love how these movies open simply with the Bat logo. No opening credits, nor even the title, just the Bat logo, and it is shown in a very subtle and kind of symbolic manner. In this film, the logo is shown with flocks of flaps, bats flapping through the sunset. In The Dark Knight, the logo appears from a blue explosive flame, which was actually pretty cool. And in The Dark Knight Rises, the logo appears from ice cracking, which I also like too. It's so cool that they did that. And yeah, I also love the logo in this trilogy. I like how it looks more fierce compared to the usual one he always has. Meaning the one I have on my shirt right now. I like the Bat logo. So yeah, I like the Bat logo in these films. One thing I should mention is that the movie is the quintessential film that had effectively made the term reboot very popular in Hollywood, and is the one that had started the long trend of reboots that had come afterwards. Most well-known examples such as James Bond's Casino Royale, Superman's Man of Steel, the Planet of the Apes trilogy, which I have reviewed earlier, and I love these movies a lot. But again, even Spider-Man had gotten the reboot treatment twice. But that also doesn't mean that only the good things came out of this. This movie had kind of gave Hollywood the wrong message, and that audiences had desired to see more movies have the dark and gritty approach that Batman Begins had introduced. Because of this movie, multiple movies had started to be given the dark and gritty tone to make it seem more serious. Many movies that had fallen victim to this tone were The Amazing Spider-Man, Man of Steel, and even the 2015 Fantastic Four reboot, which, if you ask me, had put the final nail in the coffin for this tone. I had never seen a movie fail so miserably like Fan-4-Stick. I remember the last time I had seen it on DVD was back in early 2016, I think, in my local Walmart on a $10 shelf. That's how cheap it had quickly gotten. But still, despite setbacks, Batman Begins had proven you can restart an old franchise from scratch with no connection to any of the previous films, and create new stories for the mythology. So, overall, Batman Begins is being given by me a well-deserved 9 stars out of 10, because I believe it is the quintessential Batman origin story you could ever find on film, and a reboot to take inspiration from. But still, in this film we are given more depth into understanding how and why Bruce Wayne had decided to become Batman, and it also further delves into the building partnership between Batman and Gordon. And also the dark and grittiness is actually a very beneficial factor to the film's tone and approach. Unlike most of the other superhero reboots which had tried to take that tone and approach but failed. But yeah, Batman Begins is certainly the reboot the Batman film series had desperately needed after Batman and Robin. So thank you for watching, ladies and gents. And what do you think of Batman Begins and the overall Dark Knight Trilogy? Do you love them? Did you have any form of problems with them? Let me know what you think of them in the comments. So thanks for watching, ladies and gents, and until then, I will see you all next time. And remember, I'm Batman.